Welcome back to another episode of our podcast exploring the life and work of painter Paul Ygartua. In this episode, we talk to Paul and Joanne about the early 1980s, welcoming another addition to the clan and returning to Scottsdale and Hawaii. We join them talking about Paul's parents visiting Canada. So your father all the way from the Basque Country and then to England, and now he's managed to follow you.
This is it. They followed us everywhere.
They
followed us to Israel and
they loved the
Canada,
opportunity
Hawaii.
to come anywhere we were. I mean,
he kept telling me that he wants to obviously leave us some money, and I said, if you leave me money, I'm going to buy a Porsche. So he said, oh my God, no. So I said, well, in that case, you better spend your money visiting us wherever we are. And that's basically what they did.
Well done. Yes.
And they had a lot in common, of course, with my father. I forgot to say, your mother did such beautiful work. And my father gave her a beautiful book on the ballet. And then she did a painting of the cover, right, which my father had beautifully framed. And he had that in the front room for years, right?
And then we decided we were going to go. We had this show at Agassiz Gallery in Calgary. So we decided to take my mother and father there for a trip through the Rockies, which is a wonderful thing to do for anybody. Yeah. And then we ended up in Calgary.
Yeah, and that was interesting for them because once you get to Calgary, it's like cowboy town.
Oh God,
it's a little bit more like the States.
It's westerns,
very Western.
They have rodeos. It's just like in the States. Actually, it's a lot like the States.
I mean, we were always considering because we just look at all kinds of shows. Doesn't necessarily mean it's only art. So something like the big rodeo show, but I think it's July. And we're never in Canada, usually during that time.
Yeah, we could have done that show.
Yeah, but, you think, you got these...
We had so much going on, it's hard to do everything.
We did a couple of shows in Calgary, but that was like winter shows.
But this was with the station wagon, and we had a U-Haul behind, which had all the paintings in. And so we all headed off to Calgary and did the show there, which was
and that
quite
show
good.
Was a mixture, you had like the natives, but you also had... looking back in the late 1800s, what were there? The miners, and there was
some of the old. That's right.
Yeah, the people from the old cars. You did.
That's right. A few old cars and more Western type style.
Yeah, a little bit more like a Western feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite fascinating.
He had the gallery for how many years?
He had it for years before we met him, but we must have been with him for at least
5 or 6 years,
or maybe 8 till he retired.
That's right, and then he went over to Vancouver Island, that's right. Yeah.
And your parents liked, that was quite an eye-opening experience for them?
Oh, God, yeah, the Rockies is something else.
They loved everything, And their travel, they loved travel, so... my father loved travel. My mother, not so much. She was a very nervous person. But, for travelers, then it's they want to fit in as much as they can.
So everybody went? So that was it all four?
Not my parents, but just...
Right, yeah.
And Tala, of course.
Tala,
our children are always with us. Every show, every... Yeah, they did fine. Well, I was saying, Tala had already been through about... 7 or 8 countries. Before we got back when she was 11 months, she'd lived in Cannes for 4 months, and she'd lived in Jerusalem for 6 months. So the first year of her life, we did introduce our lifestyle, and she didn't think anything of it. This is what we do, right?
Yeah.
No, they've actually, later on, they sold paintings of mine. Went door to door selling
that was
paintings.
Once.
Yeah.
That was once with a school project. And actually these clients are still our clients today. And he just happened to be a judge.
Grandma said, don't go knock on any doors in my street.
So that's what they did.
So they did.
And this is like 3 doors down. And they bought all the sketches.
They bought everything off
And
them.
they came back and
they
said...
came back with about $200.
They said, okay,
and they
that's
said,
it.
But this is for us. We're keeping the money.
Yeah.
Tala said.
I think some had to go to the school.
I was going to ask you, Paul, it's a question I should have brought up earlier, really, I think, but at some point your dad was obviously was like any parent, concerned that you had to have a proper job and a career and that sort of thing. And he probably was slightly suspicious it wouldn't work out, which is fairly natural.
Sure.
How would, at that time, or can you remember what point it changed, or how did he feel at this point, 1980?
Look, as soon as I started making money and was doing well, he changed his total attitude. Then it was always anybody who. He had a wife who was an artist who never sold a painting hardly.
Wow,
so we figured if this is the life of an artist,
she didn't go into shows. She didn't know how to do it, and in those days,
that's right.
maybe
After
in
the
England,
war, it was very difficult. So to sell paintings would not be.
But your father then ended up asking for sketches to show all his.
I used
the
to
people
take my
he worked
stuff to
with.
work and sell it at work.
Oh yeah.
So it's quite pleased.
No, he was okay after that. It looked like we were traveling all over the blooming world, so he figured he can't be doing that bad.
Well, after meeting my father, of course.
And my father, he was of course the opposite to my dad as far as being a
your
patron
father
of the
figured,
arts. He just loved arts and loved me being an artist and
that gave your father confidence.
And it was a businessman as well, so he
was a businessman, successful businessman. So the thing is about anything is if you show that you've got confidence in doing something, people will go along with you. People will follow you. They'll be even, more keen to be a part of your life.
So the next stop was back to Scottsdale. Now,
Right.
tell us why this happened and what was going on with Scottsdale, because we covered this a couple of episodes ago, and it was fantastic at the time, wasn't it?
That's right. Well, we shipped paintings there from Cannes. When we were in Cannes, we shipped paintings to Scottsdale while they were still obviously doing good business, and they sent us checks for all the paintings, and of course they sent it to Cannes. So we then sent them to Vancouver, and then they all bounced. So, so we had about $8,000 worth of bounced checks.
Yeah, in those days, that's more like 25,000.
That's like 25,000 today. And so John wasn't too worried, but I thought, oh God, that's the end of that,
Yeah.
Well, I never count on any, like Paul said, hey, this is great. I said, we always have to wait. In those days, it would take 3 weeks to go through, the bank. And I said, yeah, that's good, but we always wait till it's confirmed, right? Sure. But I didn't expect it not to be. But this time...
so we headed down to Scottsdale basically to check up on her.
Pick up any
paintings she had left over, any money she had for us, because we found out she'd gone bankrupt anyway.
Yeah.
So she had to pay debts off and everything else. So by the time we got down there, we met her. And we don't get mad with people, it's just life. She had a tough time, and that's the way it is, So we had a nice time down there. Met her son and daughter, of course, could not believe that we were not upset with their mum.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when you think about it, we'd done very well with her gallery for many years.
Well, we always said, you know what, in business, hey, things can go wrong.
Sure.
You just don't hold on to it. You let it go, and you look at all the positive, all the good.
We just hope the paintings went to a good home.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they did. And the whole thing is that... we had such an opportunity down there, and everything was worth it just for those 3 years that we did have.
And as you say, it's not what you said. It's not what you lost, but what you gained. That's completely true.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's a great.
We never, ever, ever look back at anything negatively like any. We've had people take a painting and not pay us before now.
Yeah, not very often.
But not very often.
A couple of times.
Very rarely, a couple of times. But if you're going to chase them or try worrying about it, that's a negative.
Well, the best one, which is in Hawaii, that's coming up, but that was crazy. It was a big Hawaiian or native.
Oh, someone stole it out my car.
In the middle of the night, the landlady said, I was going to the washroom.
I looked out the window and saw this great big
Hawaiian
face walking
guy.
by.
He left the door open.
I left the door open in my car.
Oh.
And we thought, we're happy. A Hawaiian guy of long hair. That sounds nice. I hope they cherish and love it.
Very good.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I even met someone later on who'd been to a party and seen the painting on the wall in this house.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I didn't bother chasing it down. So then we ended up driving back from Scottsdale to Vancouver.
Yeah. And then I was 1 month
Joanne
pregnant.
was 1 month pregnant.
Ah, okay.
So she must have got pregnant in Arizona.
Hot?
Very hot. Swimming pool there, nice swimming pool in the place.
Yeah. So it was a good time, yeah. It did have a good time in Scottsdale. Just as a side question, I just wondered if, because by now you had not a few different styles, but you had like an armory of different subjects and maybe styles. Was any selling better than others, or did it all mix up together?
They all went through a period. It's like fashion, the styles go with whatever is in fashion at the time, and sometimes I was selling lots of natives, sometimes some landscapes. But mostly they were during that period, it was all my native work, wasn't it?
Yeah, but after Europe, it's interesting that you asked that, because it is true. Because over in Europe, sure, he did some native, but he started the impressionistic scenes, which he's always done.
Right,
and they are popular all the time. So in the end, because Paul does many different styles and he loves to introduce all his styles at once. That's how we really
I like the show
catered,
mixed up. I always like a show where I've got just about every style I do in it.
And then there's always somebody,
Then it looks like there's 3 or 4 artists.
Yeah,
but it gives them more of a diverse choice.
Somebody
if you just
like
paint,
jazz.
If only thing I did was native paintings, and
it's harder.
People would walk in if they didn't want to buy a native painting. They're not going to buy a painting. But if you've got other things around that they like,
and depending on the city, like Toronto's big with the music.
Sure. So I always did some music, jazz paintings,
really,
which always were popular. The musicians.
Of course, the impressionistic style, you can have any subject.
That's right.
So all the different subjects, but also what was very popular, particularly in Toronto, was the horse races.
Oh, yeah.
And impressionism, you feel like horses are really...
Sometimes it's not the style, it's the subject matter.
Yeah.
It depends. You go through all kinds of periods of I always figured to have a real diverse subject matter and a diverse in styles. That way you really are, catering to a lot of different tastes out there.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the reasons I survived well, was because I had a lot of different choices for people. I'd even get people coming up and the husband would say, "Oh, I don't like that." And the wife would say, "Well, I love it." And then he'd say, "Well, I like this one over here." And sometimes they'd buy 2.
I was going to say, yeah.
one for each of them,
Yeah.
It's good not to be pigeonholed as well, isn't it?
Oh, for God's sake, I hate to be pigeonholed. And a lot of artists I know, they start with a style, they make it, they have some success with it, and that's it. They paint it for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes they're super sensitive. I always remember that other guy we met at the Toronto Art Expo. And he did fine in the end, but he was a teacher, and then he went to painting jazz. Yeah. But his jazz, they were, they looked a little stiff, right? He wasn't loose enough. But with that particular show, the guy said, "Could you demonstrate, and I'll give you a $3,000 booth, right? You don't have to pay anything."
I had all these artists coming around trying to copy my style.
But
I figured that's the last time I'm going to paint in public.
Yeah. Well, you did on occasion.
I did, but only things that I knew that it wasn't going to be easy for anybody to copy.
Yeah, but this guy got very. He was there every hour that Paul was painting, and then his wife came over and said that he's very depressed. And I said, "Well, he does very nice work. Well, do you have any opinion or what?" I said, "Well, look, if he's sketching more, then he'll get a little looser, And so I did get an email 1 year later to say that Paul had changed his life completely, and that he went back to sketching, and he started to speed up, and all of a sudden there was movement.
You see, Paul, you could have been a teacher. You gave it up too early.
Yeah, no kidding.
They'd like